All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Strive for Good Life podcast. My name is Nino Bingera, and I'm here with Ellen Coomer, who is an intuitive life and business coach and entrepreneur. I'm super excited to have her on the show. So welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. Super happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm super happy to have you. I know our last conversation was really good, so I'm excited to just get into some of the same things we talked about then. So maybe we just start and give, listeners a little bit of a background on yourself, how you kind of got started in, I guess, your early career and, what led you to wanting to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, sure. So I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur, but even in my early life, like straight out of university, I ended up selling books door to door in America, if you can believe it. So I learned sales at a really young age. I was, blessed to work with a really good ethical sales company. So I sold books door to door and built a sales organization across Eastern Europe, doing that for like 10 years. And then I went in, worked for a small business doing communications and consulting and still sales. And then I ended up working with a corporate. And I kind of got in that for about 5 years. And then that little voice that was going, there's got to be more to life than this, was getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And I realized that actually I needed to take some time out. I wanted to go back and do something on my own. I wanted to have my own business. I wanted to travel again. I wanted to support other people and do more development work. So I handed my notice in and I went sailing around the world for a couple of years and built my business while I was sailing the world before settling. I say settling, kind of settling back down in the UK a few years later, where I then bought a boat, which I now live on. I don't know if you can tell, but there's companionway steps behind me. So I now live on my boat, and right now I'm in the south of the UK, hunkered down in a marina for the winter. I'm running my business from here.
I love that. I mean, you've clearly been very intentional about designing your life, and I love that. So many people don't know that they can, just set out a vision like that for themselves and then actually fulfill that. I kind of want to go back to sales because you said something interesting. You said you were blessed to work with people that, were doing sales ethically. And I think a lot of people get turned off by sales because of that unethical aspect. What differentiates the two, I guess, in your mind?
So for me, I talk about, sales can either be sleazy or sensational, right? And too many people think that it is sleazy because that's the experience they've had with salespeople, through their life. And so for me, that aspect of sales, the unethical sales, is where you're trying to get somebody to buy something. You're trying to persuade them that this is what they want, whether they need it or not, whether they want it or not. Whereas from the ethical space of selling, it's about finding people who want what you have and seeing enough people to find those people that are going to go, oh my God, that's exactly what I need right now in my life. And our focus on those early days was actually getting to know really quickly, so it was like, how quickly can you get somebody to say no to you because they're not interested, so that you can move on and find somebody who does want to speak to you and does want to understand more about what you're doing. So for me,
okay.
Sensational sales became all about finding that right fit, not about trying to convince somebody they should buy from you.
I love that. Because, we're bombarded with sales messages all day long. So the last thing we want is for another person to try and sell us. But when it is the right fit, then it's a natural solution, right, to someone's problem. And it doesn't have to be sleazy at all, like you said. So I love that. So I'm kind of curious. So you were selling books door to door, or tell me a little bit more about that and why you got into that.
Yeah, so we were selling back in the day, so we're talking like nearly 30 years ago, we were selling not encyclopedias, study guides to help with homework. So books and then eventually CDs. And they still do to this day. They sell coaching students as well as books and CDs and, SAT prep and stuff. But I got into it because I was at university and I had absolutely no idea what I was going to do next. And I knew that I wanted to do something that was a bit of a challenge that would look good on my CV. And somebody came to campus and said, hey, this is a really challenging thing. And I was like, yeah, sounds challenging. I'll go and do it, which probably tells you a little bit about my my personality and some of the other things, I did actually, in between two of those, I did actually sail around the world. So I decided to learn to sail. And so I sailed around the world on a yacht race. So I've never usually chosen the easy path for things in life. And that's some of what I've had to learn, how to do things a bit more easily through my life. But yeah, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And it sounded, worst case, go to America for the summer and knock on doors and sell books. And I wasn't that good at it. And so I wanted to be better and learn how to, be more effective at speaking to people and communicating to people, and then working and managing and leading teams. And so I decided to stay, and it kind of rolled on from there.
I love that, especially the part where you said it wasn't something you were good at initially. And so, I think that's a common misconception that people have, especially regarding sales. You either have that, charismatic personality or you don't. But, what most people don't understand is that a lot of people are coming from your position where they have to learn that and build it. And it really is just a set of skills to be able to talk to people appropriately. Right. So was it just trial and error, or were there other things that you were kind of using to help yourself develop those skills? Or what would you say about your ability to learn that?
I think the biggest thing was really recognizing that that it wasn't personal. Like if somebody wasn't interested in what I was selling, it had nothing to do with me. They just didn't need that right then, and so that actually I was better off if I just kept working and saw more people, then I would find the people that had the need for that product. And I got much better at asking questions to see if somebody was a good fit. So I was working with my time better, and so it was more about asking questions to understand whether somebody was a good fit for the product than it was trying to convince somebody why they should buy the product. And I do intuitive sales now, and so I teach people how to connect into their own essence in selling right now and their own authentic self when they're selling, through a series of some really simple premises about sales. And I think those are the foundations that I really got to grips with, like things like a confused mind says no, so are we being clear about what we're doing, because if someone is confused, they're going to say no matter what. So it becomes about how you're communicating with people rather than trying to convince somebody that they should be buying something that they don't need. It's understanding whether there is a need there. And if so, going, hey, this might be something, have a look at it, see what you think.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. So specifically, sounds like you got really good at qualifying people, which is incredibly important to make sure that they fit. And so then you got into the corporate world, right? You said you worked with a small firm and then got into corporate.
Yeah.
Were you doing sales also in that job in the 9 to 5?
So in the I wish it was 9 to 5. No, corporate was more like 7 to 7. But
Of course, yeah.
the one of the reasons I left, but I was actually managing a sales team, an online sales team. And so we were doing what was called the online sales. So we were doing lead generation. So I did that for about a year. But I've always been called to support others and to develop others. And so I kept leaning more and more into the training the team as opposed to just kind of managing and leading the team. And this didn't go unnoticed. And so they asked me if I wanted to spend 12 months actually building a sales training team for the company. They didn't have one actually in-house in the UK. And would I work and look at maybe what was needed behind the scenes? So after about 12 months, I kind of went, actually, this is a bigger job. And actually, let's give you some people. And can you really focus on that, building out our sales, our methodology and our training? And that kind of grew and grew.
Wow. So you really became the expert and in a sense wrote the book on how to do sales for the company. That's amazing. And so you kind of alluded to why you left. Was it just the long hours, or, what else was to that decision to leaving?
Yeah, I'd created what I call now like a shadow career. Like it was a really safe version of what I really wanted to do. So I had all the success I might have wanted, but I wasn't really feeling fulfilled. And, I work with a lot of people in that situation now, where you kind of wake up one day and you're like, okay, so this is what I wanted. I have the house, the car, the whatever it is. But actually I'm feeling like there's something a little bit more to life than this. And so I was kind of feeling, hey, I want something more. I want something more. And what I realized is that I still had a deep love of teaching. I had a deep love of traveling. I wanted to do something a bit different. And actually, I'd kind of like boxed myself into this job that was like, or career that was like a version of that, but like a limited version of that. And that voice just got louder and louder and louder, to the point I just went, you know what? Okay, I will not be here in a year. I'm not sure what I'm going to be doing yet, but I will be doing something I love, or I will be sailing, or a combination of both, but I will not be here in a year. And that, once that decision was made, everything just kind of fell into place after that.
Okay, that's very interesting. So you set the deadline, the end goal of, I'm going to be out of here no matter what. I'm done with this job by this time. And then you just went by, I guess, faith, or just trusted that things would work out. I think that's very impressive, because I think a lot of people get hung up on not knowing what to do. And so then they don't leave the job because they don't have the next thing lined up. I mean, and so I guess my question would be kind of, what was the process of then figuring out the next step for you?
Well, at that time, I was really learning about intuition and how to connect more deeply into my intuition. And that really has been what's guided me ever since. So it wasn't a case of trying to work out. It was a case of always kind of like, I have a technique I use, which around structured intuition, where, we all have those moments we go, oh, I knew I should have done that thing differently, right? Well, so I work with people so you can actually step in and ask your question of your intuition before you kind of have the, oh no, I knew I should have done something different. So I was doing that. I was stepping in, I was asking my intuition, and so that's when I had that intuitive hit, was like, okay, you're not going to be here in a year. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be here in a year. But I kept working, and there was nothing else that was coming. And then I got, okay, it's time to hand your notice in now. And that was in May. And so I did. And then it was like, okay. And I just kept working, and it was like, right, now it's time to do this. And then it was like, right. And then a friend said, hey, do you want to come sailing with us? And intuition was like, yeah, you go do that. So I was like, okay. So then I did that. And then their boat sank. So I couldn't go sailing with him. And at this point, I had handed my notice in. I had a one-way ticket to Scotia to start sailing. And I just got, just go. And I met another couple on the docks, and I ended up sailing with them to the Galapagos, and intuition just kept saying, do this. This is your next step. This is your next step. So I never knew exactly what was coming next. But I guess I had that faith in my own intuition to take that next step, because I'd had experience with it right up to that point. Every time I followed my intuition, something magical happened. And that is the beauty of it, right? Something magical happened. I never was 100% sure what was going to happen next, but I knew something magical was going to happen next,
That's amazing. I think it's just so fascinating, because I've seen similar things happen in my life when I've trusted in that gut feeling that I just need to act and do whatever it is, even though I had no idea why or what the next step would be. But somehow it's worked out. I imagine, because you do teach people how to lean into that intuition, that it's probably not, the most simple of things to start applying to yourself, because I imagine that a lot of comes with breaking down a lot of fears, right? Or maybe beliefs that someone has about themselves. But I guess, what would you say to someone trying to maybe start leaning into that more? Where do they start with that?
I think it's a choice. You choose to lean into it more, because when we set an intention like that, then we find opportunities, to experience that more. We will hear the voice more. And the more we listen to it, the more we hear it. Or we choose to lean into it, and then we'll see an intuitive yoga class or something like that, and go, oh, hang on a second, I'd never seen that before. But things like that we'll become more aware of. And I don't know if there is such a thing. Maybe someone can make one up, but we'll notice something and go, wow, okay, I'm being drawn to this. I'm being drawn to books about my intuition. I'm being drawn to coaches who work more intuitively. So I think the first thing is always the choice, right? It's that intention to choose to choose to lean into it. And to, you know, and to follow the next obvious step, to follow the next obvious action. And that's often where we can get stuck, is, you know, that fear of not wanting to take that next obvious action, you know, and we talk about like those limiting beliefs, and then we spend so much time going, okay, well, now I've got these limiting beliefs, I have to get rid of my limiting beliefs. And I think that's so dangerous, because that is setting up this idea that there is a condition that has to be present for us to create and for us to follow our intuition. And really, you know, you don't need to fix your limiting beliefs or change them. You need to be aware of them. But if you just lean into your intuition and lean into what you want to create and take the next step, that'll be apparent to you regardless of your limiting beliefs.
That's really interesting. So you're saying that the idea that you have to get rid of your limiting beliefs almost becomes like a side project that distracts from just leaning in and doing it.
Absolutely.
That's an interesting way to think about it. Okay. And so your intuition then was, you know, you went sailing, and then did it just naturally, because you were already kind of doing this mindset work and this intuition work, did it just make sense to then start teaching people that, or how did that come about?
Yeah. So I got to go and stay with a friend of mine in the US, and she picked me up at the airport. We had lunch, and she said, okay, so I'd like to pay you some money. And I said, okay. I said, what for? And she said, to coach me. And I said, okay. So I became an intuitive coach. And, you know, as I was stepping into my own practice, I got, you know, run a workshop. So I thought, okay, I'll run a workshop. So I put on a workshop, and intuition said, on this day in this place. And so I leaned in and I did it, and only 2 people showed up. And I went, okay, 2 people showed up. But one of them said, hey, would you mind coming to my house and doing the same talk with me and my sisters? I've got like 4 sisters, and I'll put on nibbles, and, you know, like kind of one of those old Tupperware parties, right? Back in my day as a child. And I was like, sure, why not? Seemed obvious. So I did it. And then people would say, so you talk about the work? And I said, yes, I go around to people's houses and I do. We have nibbles, and you lay on some food, and I give a talk. And people went, oh, would you come to my house and do one for my friends? I'm like, sure. So I kept doing that. And after that, I would say, you know, and I'm doing an introductory coaching session, and people would sign up for it. And then people said, well, could you come and talk in my company and give a talk about this? This is really interesting. So I said, yeah, sure. So I went into companies and I gave talks, and then people came up afterwards and said, you know, can I do a coaching session? I said, sure. And then people referred me, people getting results, you know, and then their friends were going, hang on a second, what's changed in your life? And they were like, oh, you should talk to Ellen. And so I was getting referrals and referrals and referrals. And so I stopped needing to do, you know, dinner parties. So I was getting referrals. And then people would say, I was working with leaders in business, and they would say, well, could you come in and teach this? Can you come and run a workshop for my team? And so I started working with leadership teams and sales teams to help them step out of, you know, what I call the cage, which is the conditions, the assumptions, the guilt, and the expectations that tend to drive us, and into like the truest expression of our spirit and what we'd love in the world. Because the truth is, most of us spend our time on those side projects, as you called it. I like that. We spend our life working on side projects we think we need to be working on, rather than actually creating what we love. And most people create careers that are essentially a side project rather than creating what they love, right? Or businesses that are a side project rather than what they would truly love. So I started working with people in business and leadership and teams. And then a lot of the leaders I was working with left their corporate life and set up a business. And then I started working with them on building their businesses intuitively. Because not only did I have the background in sales, but also they didn't want to build their business the way they had built their corporate life. You know, and oftentimes you see people who leave corporate to start their business, and they take themselves with them. So they're working as hard as they ever worked in corporate, and still not with the life they want. Or they kind of reject everything about corporate structures and conventional wisdom, and they kind of float around and make no money and just kind of enjoy. And so the people I was working with wanted to create their businesses intuitively, and create the life they wanted, as well as having their business. So the business has kind of evolved over the years, which is why I now work with leaders in corporates and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing that it kind of just naturally merged, you know, the intuitive work with your expertise in sales and business. So pretty amazing how that worked out. You know, given who you've worked with, or the types of people you've worked with, what are some of the biggest challenges, kind of aside from just maybe mindset or trusting intuition, because you work with a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, uh, what are some of the other challenges that you help them overcome or that you've personally had to really work at overcoming? What would you say to that?
Well, I think, if I have to say that without addressing mindset or intuition, I think that's a struggle, because the reality is most of the challenges people have, one of the first challenges is then their business or their career is not aligned to who they truly want to be. There's not aligned to their true self. And so that's one of the first things I help people do is clarify what it is that they truly want in their life. And then for their business or for their career, because often we don't know. We've been so disconnected from what we would truly love. And often I say to people say, what do you do? Oh, I help people create what they love. They're like, oh, I don't know what I love, is a really common answer. So that's really the first thing. So it's to really clarify for people what it is that they would love to do. So the struggles that I see with people is that they're just not really connected to what it is they truly love to do. The next one is that they're doing all of the things they think they should do. They're not leaning into their true strengths. They don't have that faith in themselves to go, okay, this is my way of doing it. And so every new course, every new guru, every new Facebook ad for like, oh, this is the way to do it. No, this is the way to do it. No, this is the way to do it. Oh, I need to do it by social media. No, I need to do this. And they just get confused and overwhelmed. And I see that in myself as well, because I have my cage the same as everyone else, and I can fall back into old patterns and old habits if I am not really aware, which is, whoever you work with, having a coach or, a group of people that can reflect back to you, maybe what you're not seeing, those patterns that you're falling back into, I think is really, really important. And so that's the other thing we get so consumed by doing all the things we think we should do in order to be successful that we actually lose sight of our right way of doing things, because I don't think there's any right way to do anything, but there is our right way of doing something. And so people lose sight and lose their connection with that.
Right. That's really interesting. So, because I've definitely fallen into that trap of kind of chasing the next new shiny object, right? So I guess when it comes to getting clarity and figuring out what aligns with them, is there a process to that? Is it just writing out kind of what their ideal business looks like, or kind of, what does that look like practically in terms of figuring that out and then being able to, stay focused? Does that come back to having that vision or that plan outlined, or I don't know, what would you say to that?
Yeah, for me, the sequence I take people through is firstly getting clear about what are some of the unconscious drivers, so the cage, as I call it. What are the things that are limiting us? What are some of those unconscious drivers? What are those limiting beliefs? Not so we think we have to fix them or spend our life trying to fix them, but so that we can be aware of the strategies. So one of my deeply held beliefs is that I'm not good enough, and therefore I need to work hard in order to be valid in the world. So I recognize that in myself. So every time I feel like I'm pushing or I'm forcing or, I've got to do more and work more and squeeze everything in, I can take a step back and go, oh, okay, I can see where I'm coming from now. So it was Carl Jung that said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it'll direct your life and you will call it fate. And so when you make those beliefs, those stories, those strategies conscious, you can just become aware of them. And there's nothing else you need to do, just than become aware of them so you can shift your focus. So once we understand how unconsciously we might be driving ourselves, that kind of turns the volume of that cage down so that we can hear the voice of what it is that we would truly love. And that's the next step for me, is looking at, what would we truly love in the whole of our lives? It doesn't matter whether you have a career or you have a business, right? It's an aspect of your life, and you can't separate, I have my business and I have my life. No, we have life, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you want in the whole of your life? And then from there, what is the vision of your business that serves and supports that life? And then from the vision of the business, okay, what are your next steps? But I have a structured, intuitive process to take people through to keep stepping out of that cage, to keep stepping out of the shoulds, to keep stepping back into the vision. And then structure is really important. You're saying about, yes, having the vision, but also having a structure of keep stepping into the vision. So we can look at, what is my vision for my business? What is my vision for this year? What do I want to, where do I want to be at the end of this month? And then each day being able to be in that vision and working on the things that are most, important, our inspired actions, rather than our to-do list. Our to-do list is all the things we think we should be doing. And it can be very long and we never tick everything off, right? It's all of the things I should be doing. You can never do enough of it. But when you're in your vision, you go, what is my next step? What's my next inspired action? And then you keep bringing yourself back to that. That's when things start to unfold and things become more effortless, more magical. And all of these synchronicities seem to fall into place. Yeah.
I love that. Lots of important stuff that you just said there. So having structure, I clearly agree that that's incredibly important no matter what you're doing, especially running a business. But in terms of, how you apply this, I'm trying to kind of wrap my head around, what that actually looks like. Do you schedule days into your calendar where you just have time to kind of step into your vision of the business, like you say? Or how does that work, I guess, in that sense?
Yeah. Well, I actually run an intuitive business group, so I use that structure for myself as well. So we work monthly to step into, to look at what we've created in the last month and to step intuitively into the plan for the next month. And then every week I step in and go, okay, so based on that, what is my plan for this week? And then every day, I step into my vision for the week and go, okay, so what is it that is most important for today? And I tend to write. I'm a big lover of post-it notes. If you could see my wall, you'd see a ton of post-it notes on the boat here. So I write it out because then it's visual for me. And when I wander and my cage is trying to take me off, going, oh, maybe you should be, I don't know, doing this other thing. I can look at it and go, no, I'm coming back to this. This is what I got to do today. I'm coming back to this. And that just keeps me on track. And some days I go off and then the next I go, wow, I didn't do anything. Okay. My cage got the better of me yesterday and that's okay. Today, I'm just going to step back in and I don't beat myself up about it. I'm a big believer there's no point angsting backwards. We just kind of create forwards from wherever we're at.
Yeah, I love that. The idea of the cage and falling subject to that, that's an interesting way of framing it. And I like it. I also like the idea of sticky notes as kind of visual representation and something to, remind yourself. I think that's really important. There's probably a lot more that I can do as far as just visual reminders. Let's talk about, so I'm just really, I guess, interested in how this business grew. Was it all just word of mouth? And because, you did such an excellent job, you just got referrals, or were there other strategies that you employed or have since employed to continue to grow your business?
It has all been word of mouth up until this point. I would say my biggest, marketing strategy has been myself and traveling. And actually, when I ever got stuck into I should do things a certain way, my business has stagnated quite a lot. I've got trapped in, the should trap. And, I went traveling this year to South Africa for 5 days to be at a friend's 40th. And then turned out another friend was over there and needed some support. So I flew up there and I ended up meeting different people and came home with another 4 clients for my business program, right, through just traveling, being in South Africa. So everything has been that word of mouth. And until I would say this last kind of 6 months where I've been getting to be out speaking to more people, and so this is why we're talking, right? Because intuition was like, you enjoy speaking and talking to people and sharing. So why don't you go on some podcasts? So I'm like, okay. So that's how I was introduced to you, and so that's what I've been doing and sharing more of my story on social media. So that's what I've been getting to do. So I've been leaning into that, and I've now got a free workshop that I'm running actually next week. I've got 26 people signed up for that. So it's resonating as a topic, and it's because I've just been out there and I've just been more consistent. But there's millions of things I could be doing. the thing intuition is telling me to do is podcast, tell my story, light touch on social media. And so I have been leaning into that more and more. And that has taken some, I guess, holding my feet to the fire, because every part of my cage and my being is like, no, you don't want to do that. You should be doing it this other way, right? Or there'll be a shiny new thing. I tried this. Oh, maybe I could try that. And I'm like, how seconds I got to do intuitively? No. So maybe I should lean back into that, right? And hold my feet to that fire a little bit. Because we have resistance to doing the things that are going to serve us for, some crazy way with humans that we have. We have resistance to doing the things that are truly, going to support us.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So in terms of holding your feet to the fire, are there specific mechanisms you've used to, I guess, do that for yourself? Or is it just scheduling it and making sure that, you show up? What do you say to people for that?
Well, I think there's two aspects to it. One of it is, having my structure for intuitive business planning. You keep coming back and I keep getting the same thing over and over and over again, right? Because it's this insistent voice. You've not done it yet, so can you go more podcasts? So eventually it's like, okay, so even if I forget, like, I can bring myself back on track. I have my coach who, if I forget, goes, hang on a second, were you not supposed to be focusing on getting on podcast? Oh, all right, yeah, okay. But the other thing is I've chosen to put myself in structures that support me. So I have the structure, like I said, of a coach. I have my structure of the group that I run. And I also put myself in someone's program that does social media that I liked his ethos. It was aligned with there's no right way of doing things, and connecting with that. So I put myself in his program because I got intuitively, yeah, this is the one to do. And so there was a consistency cup challenge that he ran in that. And I was like, okay, that is, the thing with not feeling good enough is like points and prizes really work for me, right? So it's this weird thing where I was like, okay, let me use my cage for me a little bit here and go points and prizes. There's a mug I'm going to win at the end of this. And so I'm going to hold myself to being consistent. What was interesting with that is it was very much like, yeah, you need to believe you can do it so you can achieve it. And I'm sitting there going, A, I don't believe I can do it. And B, but I know, again, that's another condition that people have. If I believe I can do it, I was like, I don't need to believe I can do this. I just need to follow through and take all the intuitive actions that I'm getting. And then we'll see what happens, right? So for the last 3 months, I've been following through, not believing, in social media will work for me. And I've been following through on all those intuitive actions. And I have 26 people signed up for the workshop. 21 of them have come from social media, and people reaching out separately who I've not spoken to for ages going, hey, I've seen you on social media recently. And, I don't really want to do the workshop, but can we have a chat about what you do? I'd like some coaching. I'm like, okay, So again, that whole kind of like, you need to believe it before you can create it is a complete misnomer as well. It's just another condition that we put in place to stop ourselves from creating.
That's so interesting. Yeah. So just to recap a little bit, you've put yourself in coaching programs, different things to hold yourself accountable, and then you just take action, whether or not you believe it'll actually do anything. You test it, you try it, which, yeah, it is interesting that a lot of people, you called it a misnomer, have that false belief that you gotta believe it and trust in it first or something, and then, but not, in reality, it's beliefs don't matter and make no difference without taking action, right? So I love that. Okay, so social media is actually, it turns out, is really starting to work for your business, it sounds like.
Well, I think we'll find out. Ask me in a week. But yes, I think so. And I think the thing is, anything will work, right? Every tactic will work. Every technique will work. It's about finding what works for you, and that's where I think the intuition comes in, because it's leaning into something and realizing what works for you, rather than going, okay, well, I tried it for a week and it didn't work, so I'm going to do something different, or Cage going, hey, you got to try all of these different things at once, and so none of them end up working. And so that's why that intuition of like listening to yourself and what's true for you and what's going to work for you and what you're going to enjoy doing, and leaning into your strengths is so important with all of this.
Yeah, and then doing it long enough, it sounds like, just to be able to get results with it, and not giving up and throwing in the towel before you do. Yeah, I had a note for something that I wanted to ask you about. So we've talked a lot about mindset and intuition, but I made a note about, this idea of working harder and longer, and overcoming that mindset. Do you want to touch on that?
Oh, yeah. Yes, because I think for a lot of us, we grow up with that, the societal expectation, the mindset, the belief, whatever you want to call it, that success is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, right? And that's the way I grew up. You had to work hard to be successful. You had to work hard, and then you would be successful. And so a lot of us work hard and we're successful. And you can look back and go, therefore I was successful because of all of the hard work. And when I started operating more intuitively and using more creative orientational premises, what happened was I was getting all the same accolades at work, and yet I wasn't working as hard. I used to be on conference calls with the US at like 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I was kidding myself, well, I have to be on here and I'm adding value and all these things. And once I started to recognize my cage more, I could sit with it and go, hang on a second, I'm just here because I don't think that I'm bringing value and I'm trying to prove my worth. And when I owned that and went, okay, what would I really love to be doing right now? And it's like, you want to be at home, like doing art, right? I'm not a great artist, but I love getting my fingers dirty and like glue and paints and everything. And so I just went, you know what, I'm just going to go do that. So I would go home and I would do that. And it didn't make any difference. No one minded I wasn't on the call. My cage was like, oh no, but you're not proving your worth. But my spirit was totally happy because it was like having fun doing the things that I enjoyed doing, right? Working with my clients, I have a client who was working kind of like, 60, 70 hours in his corporate role. And, through doing this, he started working less and less. And came to me one day and he's like, okay, we've got a problem. I've got to talk about some stuff. I'm like, yeah. He's like, I'm only working 35 hours a week. And I said, okay, I'm sorry, I'm not seeing the problem here. And he's like, but I'm only working 35 hours. I said, okay. I said, you meeting your objectives at work? Sorry, my computer's about to. I said, you meeting your objectives at work? Yes. Okay. I'm still not sure. He said, but I feel guilty. I was like, oh, why? Because I should be working harder. Well, why? Because we've been taught that it shouldn't be easy. It's not okay for life to be easy. And if you come from a belief type that's, aligned to not good enough, it's like, I'm only valid if I'm achieving in the world. So if something's easy, it's not an achievement and therefore I'm not valid. So we will actually do things to make things harder for ourselves so that we can feel more valid in the world. And I said, but okay, so you're only working 35 hours, you're achieving everything you want to at work. He said, yeah, more, we're smashing our quota. Okay, you're overachieving at work. What about the rest of life? He's like, but I'm doing my hobbies. I'm painting. He had a dream to open a gallery and was doing it. His relationship with his partners and his children was improving. I'm like, okay. So he's like, I love my life. I'm like, and the problem is, but I should be working harder. No, you don't. It's okay. It's okay for it not to be difficult. We don't have to struggle. And when we start working more intuitively, more creatively, things start dropping in our lap more. Those synchronicities, where people go, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. Or you're so lucky. And I just smile and go, okay, it's not luck. I've set it up like this. Because intuition is out there, right? Like, we're being bombarded by 400 billion bits of information in every moment, and we're filtering them down to 2,000 pieces of information that we're conscious of. And when we're filtering that through our cage, we're filtering it based on what's going to keep us safe. And if we have a story that says I'm safe if I'm working hard, then guess what? That's what we're going to see. And we're going to see the need to work hard. We're going to see people getting praised for being successful, for working hard and all of that, right? and it's going to feel really uncomfortable then if something comes easy to us. Whereas when we're in our intuition, we've let go of that 2000 and we're in the 400 million bits of information, and we spot things that we wouldn't see before. You know, one definition I love of genius is a genius spots connections that others don't see. And that happens when we're outside of that limited perspective, that limited cage. And then things come easily, you know, and so things happen more smoothly. And if we allow that rather than rejecting that, you know, things fall on our laps, things, you know, fall into place. And we're like, wow, well, that was easy.
Yeah, it's so interesting, this whole concept, because, you know, even for business owners, right, there's this mindset that, yeah, it's gonna be a grind. You gotta put in way more hours than a normal job to ever reach success. And what you're saying, you know, contradicts that in a lot of ways. And you're saying, and it sounded like, you know, going back to a story earlier when you went sailing, you took the break, and it sounds like just, I guess, maybe freeing yourself up mentally to be exposed to more, or to have those, I guess you would call them synchronicities, happen in your life. Seems like, you know, that wouldn't be possible if you were so set on working and grinding and putting in the long hours, right? So that's super fascinating to me, that whole concept, that you need the space to be able to, I don't know, allow more to happen for yourself and your business, sounds like.
Yeah, sometimes we're so busy working, we don't receive the insights, you know. We're trying to receive them all the time, but we're too busy that, you know, if you imagine being busy with your hands the whole time and someone's trying to throw good gifts at you and you're too busy with your hands to catch any of them. And that's what it's like when we don't give ourselves just the breath and the space to allow it to drop in.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And so I guess my next question would be, yeah, how you intentionally kind of give yourself that space. You know, what would you say to people?
Well, I think it's different for everybody. And so, you know, what works for you. So driving is a way that frees my mind quite a lot. Going for a walk, meditation, you know, for a lot of people. I do all of those things. And I also have a kind of a structured practice where there's a way you can fuel your intuition a little bit. So you can fuel getting intuitive insights by really being clear on where you want to go and choosing that. So I have a structure around that I use to fuel those insights. And then I make sure I'm giving myself, you know, space in that day, quiet time to sit with myself and be with my vision and ask, is there anything right now? And sometimes intuition drops in and goes, yes, we've been waiting to tell you this thing, right? Here you go. and then sometimes it's just, I'm in the shower and I'm like, you know, like the acronym for cage dropped in the shower. And I was just like, covered in soap and getting out with a pen and writing it down. And like, so I didn't forget it, because very often we get the intuitive insights, and unless you capture it down, it's like a dream. You know, by the time you're brushing your teeth, you've forgotten your dream. So capturing it down and, you know, concretizing it might be a new word. Concretizing it, putting it down, can support us to land that intuitive insight.
I love that. So it's such an important principle in business in general, to concretize your processes, or, you know, your inspirations, so that you can work them into your business, whatever you're doing. I love that. Where can people go to connect with you and work with you?
So if you want, you can connect with me on Instagram. It's the handle's @KoombaEllen. If you want to check out the website, you can go to createyourlushlife.com or lushlifebusiness.com if you want to check out how to use intuition in your business. And if you feel like you want a little bit more clarity on the purpose, on what you want to accomplish, you can go to theclarifyworkshop.com.
Perfect. Yeah, I love that. We'll have, for anyone listening out there, we'll have the links to all of these in the show notes. So go there to check those out and connect with Ellen. What's your final message to our audience?
Oh, you can have everything you want in life. You might need to let go of some of the things you think you should want, but actually you have everything in you already to create everything you want in your life, to create a life that you're excited to wake up to every day.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ellen. To anyone listening out there, make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're hearing this on. Please share this. That helps us out a lot. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for being here, Ellen.
No, you're welcome. It's been great. Thank you.